push that back.
Yeah, do you mind? Make sure the water's near you.
Good.
So hello and welcome. We were joking around about whether or not I should come out and not use the microphone and therefore demonstrate, in fact, a piece of what tonight's discussion and display of an amazing inventor is really about. So I'm Arthur Demarich. I'm director of the Lemelson Center for the Study of Invention and Innovation. And it's really my pleasure to welcome you to the museum and to our Innovative Lives program tonight. You're here really in the center of the Invention and Innovation wing. So this is a piece of the museum that was renovated and opened in 2015 to showcase not just amazing technologies, which are important, but also their pathways to market, the successes and some failures. And of course, invention and innovation aren't just the core of our collections as a museum, they're the basis of our country's economic growth and prosperity. And you can in fact trace that back to the founding documents of this nation. We set aside and created a regime for intellectual property, so to give patent rights to people and to make that regime democratically available. So there were patents prior to that, but it was often sort of your connections, your proximity to the rulers that would in any way give you a patent. And a patent back then was kind of monopoly right on a form of business and trade. In the US, the patent becomes a claim on a technology in exchange for making it publicly available, in exchange for telling people what it was about. It became the basis for people experimenting and building upon prior ideas, which was really a core of the innovation economy we would become. And if you think back also, there was an incredible expansion of this patenting and of the role of the independent inventor after the Civil War, after emancipation. We in fact know there were an incredible outpouring of African American inventors as well, sometimes having their ideas stolen, sometimes not being able to be recognized for who they were. And yet there was this incredible period. And then if you look past 1900, you get the rise of an industrial research lab. So you're going to hear a bit about that and the role that played, particularly Bell Labs tonight. And a kind of expansion of who inventors are. And more recently, of course, again, opportunities for independent inventors, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs. And so you're going to hear about that as well. The Lemelson Center, which is our host tonight, the group I am privileged to be the head of, was founded 23 years ago with the goal of inspiring inventiveness and bring new ideas from the research we do into the history of invention to broader public. So we like to say our goal and our mission is to engage, educate, and empower people. So we engage people through our exhibits. We engage children and young people in Spark Lab, a hands-on invention space. We educate them both about the history of invention, but also the role invention continues to play in our economy. We really want to empower people to feel that they have control. So we're constantly bombarded with the message that technology is something we have to adapt ourselves to, that the next wave of technology is coming. It's coming for your job. It's coming for your privacy. And my answer is no. It's about us controlling technology. It's about us all being inventive, manipulating, changing, and making decisions about technology in our lives. So that's a core role of what Lemelson Center is about and what you're going to hear about tonight in this program. So as you're about to hear, we are incredibly fortunate to have Jim and Ellington West here tonight. So interesting, if you go back to that 19th century moment when Edison is working on some of the earliest technologies for recording and transmitting sound, they figured out how to make a speaker. So how to go from electricity to a vibrating piece to broadcasting sound. Amplified sound would come later than Edison, but came fairly quickly. Doing the opposite, making a microphone that worked, that goes from your voice, from the vibration into an electrical signal, was fiendishly difficult. And so we're really remarkable to hear tonight how to turn the physical vibration into an electrical pulse. And we're going to hear from someone who really played an incredibly seminal role in doing that. And you'll also hear about what it takes to get new ideas to market, about the innovator and the entrepreneur. So I'm pleased now to introduce my colleague Monica Smith, the head of exhibitions for Lemelson Center and a historian of technology, who's going to be moderating tonight's program. She's published on the history of the electric guitar, on the role of play for becoming an inventor, and on the ongoing significance of place and technology clusters. And after the program, we invite you to go see our Places of Invention exhibition. She's the project director, co-curator, and principal investigator for that exhibit, and she's now directing planning for our next major exhibition, which is going to be on sport invention. So with that, please join me in welcoming our panel, and I'll turn it over to Monica.
Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see all of you here. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity tonight to introduce to you two wonderful people who I think represent this wonderful connection between not just father-daughter, but between generations, and how we can all support and nurture and enhance our own and others' inventive skills. And so tonight, I want to have the opportunity to start first myself asking questions, but I want everyone in the audience to think as we go along tonight, what are the burning questions that you want to ask? This is a great opportunity to actually talk to a real-life inventor and innovator in person. And we really encourage you to think about what questions you have. I know a lot of parents and caregivers often ask, how can I encourage my child to become the next inventor? And we think both giving them the confidence and nurturing those skills, but also seeing role models is a really important part of seeing yourself as part of the invention ecosystem here in our country. So let me start by introducing Dr. James West, who is clearly from the clapping as we came in, is a well-known inventor known best for the electret microphone, but he's worked on many other projects as well. And he was born actually in Virginia, born and bred. And he started his career at Bell Labs, where he worked his way up from technical aide to high-ranking Bell Labs fellow. He retired from there in 2001, but he's continued to carry out research and invent new technologies for sound recording and transmission as a professor at Johns Hopkins University up in Baltimore. He's a well-known advocate, too, for advocating science, engineering, and invention education, an opportunity for minority youth. And so we want to be sure to talk a bit about that. He's won many awards, but I think it's important to point out that he was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 1999, and he also won the very prestigious 2006 National Medal for technology and invention. So with that, we also have the great opportunity to meet his daughter, and also an entrepreneur, CEO, and innovator in her own right. She is the CEO of Sanavi Labs, also in Baltimore, a company developing modern medical products that analyze body sounds to diagnose disease. As many of you probably know, physicians have listened to the body for centuries to try to determine health, but Sanavi Labs is launching new digital stethoscopes that incorporate artificial intelligence technology to dramatically enhance sound fidelity and automatically detect lung sound abnormalities. And so she is also working directly with Jim on bringing some of his inventions to market. So I hope you appreciate how unique this opportunity is to hear from both of them individually and collectively tonight. With that, I want to turn it to them and really keep the focus on them and have you each give in your own words, particularly for some of the kids in the audience who might not know a little bit about your work, sort of what you're best known for and any other projects that you feel are really important to make sure that we let the audience know about. So we want to start, Jim?
Thank you, Monica. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to be here to talk to you today. I'm being asked to do what I don't like to do, and that's talk about me. But, you know, it is what it is, and I'll try to do my best. As Monica pointed out, my career started at Bell Labs, which was a very fortunate situation for me because it is the premier laboratory in the world. No laboratory can equal it in terms of the number of Nobel Prizes, the number of other very significant and important awards for a variety of science, ranging from the laser to the transistor and anything that you want to pack in between there. I'm sure you can find it at Bell Labs, including the microphone that we're now using, which is one of my inventions.
We're wearing them. Yeah, that's worth a round of applause.
But let me tell you why I ended up at Bell Labs, because it didn't pay me a lot of money. In fact, it was the lowest salary offered at the time I finished school. And I chose Bell Labs because I saw more than one person while I was there who looked like me that I wanted to be like when I grew up. In fact, Lincoln Hawkins, who's also inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, was my mentor. And he, by the way, his patents are considered the most money-saving patents ever. What he did was to learn to cure polyethylene so it wouldn't degrade under UV, under radiation from the sun. And now the sheathing on telephone cables, the sheathing on power cables could go from lead to a polymer, which was much, much less expensive. That's sort of one story coming out of Bell Labs that I like to tell. But there's a message here, especially to the young people, and that is mentoring is extremely important. You can't survive without it because you're competing against people who do have mentors, and believe me, they'll beat you every time. Because a mentor not only tells you what not to do, a mentor can guide you in terms of what you should be doing. And this is really, really very important. And I'm way off topic.
That's all right. That's all right. It's a good start. Yeah.
I have roughly 65 US patents and about 200 foreign patents. Most of them are concentrated on sensors and to both sense mechanical energy and to sense airborne energy, microphones. And solid-borne sound becomes a very important issue, and you'll hear more about this later, but to be able to pick up sounds from inside the body and to do this in a very efficient way. In other words, an electronic stethoscope with some special features that I'm sure Ellington will talk about a little later. And I'm going to pass it on.
All right. Well, that's actually a perfect segue, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a little surprised that of the accomplishments that you mentioned, I wasn't one of them, but that's okay. I'll be okay. But one of the exciting things that we're doing and that we have the opportunity to do together is our electronic stethoscope. So I want to give you guys just a little bit of information about what that is and kind of the history of how all of this got started and how I've been fortunate enough to work with you. So about 4 years ago, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, they basically set out a challenge. They wanted to challenge the best and the brightest people in the country to tackle pneumonia. So I'm not sure if any of you know this, but pneumonia is the leading cause of infant mortality globally. So we lost about 1 million children to pneumonia just last year. And so while this is a diagnosable and curable ailment, we are still losing so many children to it. So basically, Jim and his colleague, Monia, as well as 2 of their students, Demetria and Ian McLean, they really tasked themselves with finding a low-cost solution to diagnosing this disease. So they decided to take the stethoscope, which we're all very familiar with, that really hasn't been touched or reinvented since about the 1800s, and they decided, how can we tackle the 3 largest issues that eliminate the stethoscope from being an easy, readily available tool for the common person to be able to use. So the number 1 issue is sound. So if you are using a stethoscope, you really want it to be in a quiet environment because you're listening for abnormalities in the lung or the heart, and that's a very sensitive thing that you're listening for. So the first thing that they did was they removed all of the ambient noise by using active noise cancellation. So think of something like your Bose or Beats headphones and being able to eliminate all of that ambient noise. So also they took it one step further and they were able to say, okay, well, if I just want to listen to the lung, how about I remove the sound of the heart? Or if I want to listen to the heart, let's remove the sound of the lung. So check that off. That was the first thing. And then the second is, I don't know if you all realize when you're at your doctor's office that they're always looking for that right spot when they have the stethoscope on your chest. So they thought, how can we eliminate the need for this to be such a sensitive process? And so they put a bunch of transducers on the bottom of the stethoscope, allowing every spot to kind of be that sweet spot. And then the third thing that they did was, which I think is very powerful, was that they created an algorithm that they put right on board the device that has the ability to detect a normal lung sound from an abnormal lung sound. And in doing that, it allows for not just a physician to use the device, but for that healthcare worker in Malawi or Rwanda to be able to identify, are we dealing with a healthy infant or a unhealthy lung? And if it's unhealthy, if it's an affected lung, how do we expedite that care? So we are so excited that we can take these two products to market. So we have a Felix Pro and a Felix. They're two devices that are essentially the same in their mechanics, but they're really geared towards two different markets, one being the physician and the second being that healthcare worker. So.
Yeah, I'd just like to counterpoint here a little bit. She quit a
we go.
very
Family history.
high-paying job to head this company, and she did it because when, you know, at dinner or whenever it was an opportunity to talk about it, I would say, you know, we have this wonderful technology that has the potential of saving lives, and some of the lives we save might just have the secret to clean water, to clean air, and I want to save those people's lives. You know, that was the motivation that I had. And she said, I will take charge and make that happen for you. So I'm very proud of her.
Well, I think that makes a great point about this invention to innovation process that I think is so key, and that often those words are used interchangeably in our society. But you can have a great idea, a great, you know, product idea, a great, you know, service or whatever, but you have to figure out how to get it to market and to find the right. And so you need people who both can be the idea and the technical people, but you also need the people who know how to market it to the right group, to get out there, to raise the money, all those things. And it's very rare that that all comes in one personal package.
Yeah.
So having, you know, the multiple talents together makes you stronger. And I think you two are a very good example of that. But so I want to back up a little bit, speaking about your relationship here. One thing we find really interesting with inventors is how did they get inspired as children? So often it seems like that's when the, you know, initial roots are really set about seeing yourself as inventive and being nurtured into being more inventive in your daily life. So maybe I'll start with Ellington, actually, because you can talk a little bit about how your dad inspired you too, and then we'll go to Jim. He can talk about his childhood.
Yeah, well, growing up with my father, I mean, just as this opened up, that laundry list of kind of who he is and what he's accomplished, it's a pretty tough act to follow. But the encouragement and the confidence that has been instilled in me from him is really, I think, what has motivated me, gave me the courage to leave a very secure position and, you know, take the risk to leap. When my father was growing up, there were only 3, I think, options for your profession. It was preacher, teacher, doctor.
Lawyer.
Lawyer, sorry, so 4. And he broke my grandparents' hearts because he decided that he did not want to be a physician. And so there was this rebellious spirit in him that I truly believe has landed and come straight to me. Because, you know, while he had always said in growing up, you know, something in STEM, lead towards, you know, if it's not going to be mechanical engineering, please God, just at least be biomedical engineering. And I'm like, the only science you're getting out of me is a social science. And that was the deal that we made. And so I think that just being surrounded, I was raised by 2 educators and inventors and innovators, and in that it's given me the confidence to take those leaps and to be creative. So.
And can we maybe just for a moment say something about your mom as well, who's in the audience, right there, about how, because you said both parents were inventive, so.
Truly.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents, they were cruel in this way, where every weekend, my dad was an avid climber and my mom was really into adventure. So on the weekends, they would take us to Round Valley in New Jersey, and we would go on these really incredible hikes. And on these hikes, ever since I was little, they would say, you know, here's the map, here's the compass, you lead. And so one Saturday, they both just disappeared. on our hike. And I'm panicking. I don't know where they are. They're not responding. And I panicked, and then I had to calm myself and recognize that over the course of these years, they'd been giving me the tools that I needed to actually get to that end point. I finally get there. There they are, laughing. And I'm just, devastated. But the point was, they really never left. They were never too far away, but they were hidden because they wanted to see me struggle. They wanted me to face fear and then to work through it. And so I don't know whose idea of the two of you it was, but that's a really great example of the two of them working together.
Right, and she was very mad with both of us.
And I have to ask, since we're at a museum and we have Spark Lab around the corner, which we're going to encourage all of you to go visit after this, which is our hands-on invention space. Did museums, science centers, children's museums, any of that play a role in this?
Oh my goodness, my favorite place was Liberty Science Center. It was right on the cusp of New York and New Jersey, and I would beg my mother to go because my father was the first one out the door saying, when are we going? How long can we go? And we would spend hours just exploring, and the hands-on approach is so important, and that's why the Spark Lab, it's just a wonderful element to any museum because you have spent so much time walking through museums, not being able to touch anything and not being able to really understand that you can be a part of it. It was always something to observe. And so through Liberty Science Center and things like Spark Lab, it really allows for the innovative spirit to be sparked.
Yeah, I had to invent my own hands-on operation. I grew up in a small town in Virginia, Farmville, Virginia, those of you who know Virginia. And this was, of course, during segregated times, and life was not the best. Not to say it's much better in a lot of places today, but that's another story. But one of the difficulties I had in growing up was that anything that I could open with a pair of pliers and screwdriver, I did, and got into an immense amount of trouble because I could never get things back together working again. The worst one was my grandfather had a watch about that big. It was a Hamilton. I even remember the name. Very nice case and everything. 105 pieces in it, and I took it apart, but I couldn't get it back together, and that was rather severe. After that, I couldn't deal with anything that was working. I could only deal with things that were broken. So guess what? Started breaking things. So, mostly my toys, but they were just simply because I had more control over them. And so that was my museum. That and climbing the apple tree and watching the ants do their work and trying to impede their progress and only finding out that they just mapped around whatever obstacle I put in front of them. Very smart creatures. It's amazing what you can learn up an apple tree that's got ants. Anyway, that's what I...
So what about the role of your parents or uncles, aunts, other family members? Did any of them really encourage you like you encouraged Ellington?
Yeah, they encouraged me to go to medical school. I grew up, in fact, my uncle built a clinic when I was about 10 years old with my office and my brother's office. And they were very disappointed when I failed to fulfill those. And my brother did. He even went and practiced for about 5 years and hung it up and decided that wasn't the life for him either. And what you're hearing, and I must admit, I was very fortunate in growing up and having the support of the family and the means with which to do almost anything that I wanted to, that they wanted me to do. That's a privilege that I've learned that not many people had in growing up. But you have to weigh this in a very special way. By weighing it in a very special way, I mean that having the means is not as important as having the mind. And by having the mind, I mean training your mind. This is particularly to the young people here. Do your very best, because you can never tell. Believe me, An A is worth a lot more than a B. That's worth a lot more than a C. So make A's. Do the work, because if you don't start now doing the work, you'll never catch up. So don't fall behind, stay current.
So on this topic, what other sort of role models, mentors, people in your lives, teachers, others maybe that showed you the way and said, okay, I want to get A's, but not because I want to become a doctor, but because I want to find something that I love to do?
Well, that advice I didn't always follow. I did well in those courses in those subjects that I like. I only did what was, and young people, plug your ears. I only did what was necessary to get over. But the point is that there were mentors all along the way. My family were mentors to me. And growing up, there was a black man in Farmville, Virginia, who worked for the telephone company that climbed the telephone poles to fix the wires. He was unbelievable. I admired him. And my parents and my aunts and uncles were kind of ticked off at me because I admired him more than them. But why did I admire him? Because he worked with his hands with tools, and he made things work, and that really had a tremendous appeal to me in growing up.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Ellington? Were there other teachers, mentors, family?
Yeah, I can say that one of my mentors actually is a member of our team right now at Sonovy. And it's all full circle. So Eileen Bush-Vishniak is our Chief Innovation Officer. She was initially part of my dad's lab at Bell Labs, and they worked together. And then she went on to become the dean, one of the first female deans in the country, but she was the dean of the Whiting School of Engineering. And then she moved on to become the president of Saskatchewan and a provost at McMaster, and the list goes on. But the reality here is that being able to work so closely with someone who understands what it's like to be the only one, usually, in an environment, right? Being one of the only presidents of the university, one of the only provosts, and being a female, So having her and being able to work so closely with her has really helped to guide me professionally, but also personally when you're dealing with people that might not believe in your ability or might doubt you for being a female, for being African American, for being too young. And to have someone to lean on that can really help navigate through those paths, it's incredible. And so mentorship is always, as you said, key, but being able to then work so closely with that person is really, it magnifies, I think, the effect.
Well, that sort of leads to some of our interests in this sort of idea of the workplace and the larger community that supports and enhances or can sometimes inhibit invention. So, Jim, you worked at sort of the ultimate R&D lab, Bell Labs, which is still sort of held up as this great example. But I know you've talked about how Johns Hopkins, and many of the reasons you went there were sort of some similar things about culture. But if you could talk a little bit about the role of what it makes a good workplace environment to sort of support and enhance that creativity and inventiveness.
Well, first of all, people. That is the very first ingredient that you must have. People who are not exactly trained in the same discipline that you are, but who are open enough to look at problems collectively. Now, why is that important? It's important because you pick up any journal today, and in fact, in some areas, the list of authors is as long as a paper, right? And there's a little tongue-in-cheek on that, but it gets close. But I was thinking about this in preparing for this talk. I have roughly 150 rough read publications, and my last single author paper was in 1985. From that time on, the work has been done by multiple people. Now, so it's important to choose an environment to work where collaboration is fostered, where it is really important. Today, things are changing, and it's always good. Whatever the world is doing, and whatever you think is changing. Technology is changing faster, right? We're at light speed in many cases. For example, at Hopkins and many other universities in the country, entrepreneurship is the root. When I knew that I had learned to trap charge in polymer in more or less a permanent manner, it was suggested that I needed to quit Bell Labs and start a company making microphones, right? Very logical. Didn't compute with me because I knew nothing about business. I had no idea what it would be to form a company to make microphones. Well, had I done that, I could own this place because there are 2 billion electret microphones made each year, right? I only need a very small percentage of that to, to be rich, right? But money was not my motivator, and it still isn't my motivator. But the changes, and it's important for young people to understand that many of our students today don't go to work for another company, they go to work for themselves. And this is important for a number of reasons. Generally, the work that they're doing in university is on the cutting edge. It's new stuff that they're learning. They're working in labs with faculty who are on the cutting edge of research. And they come up with new ideas. They come up with new solutions to problems. What Ellington's going to talk about a little later is a good example of that because we didn't start out to make a widget that could do this. We started out to solve problems, problems that we saw as impeding the ability to detect pneumonia in infants. It's not the fact that it cannot be detected. The problem is, in many rural areas in the world, and in parts of this country, there's one caregiver for 500 plus people. And so that caregiver has got a fire hose and he's putting out fires. He's not worried about screening. He's, or she is just putting out fire. And so to see a device developed that has the potential of aiding physicians in detecting pneumonia was a very appealing property and one of the reasons that we're here today. And I'm sure Ellington will talk a little bit more about that part. Did I answer your question? I'm not sure.
All right.
What
We'll come back to a little bit, but I want you to actually talk a little bit, Ellington, about in establishing your labs, were there elements that you learned that you felt like these are really important? Did you learn them from your mentor who had been at Bell Labs too? Like, what did you pick up that you saw as being important for a culture of innovation at your work?
Yeah, my goodness. So growing up, I always heard about the magical place that was Bell Labs and what that meant and the freedom that was there of if you were a physicist but you had a question that only a chemist could answer, that they were, in the next room and that they had an open door policy. So when we were making the quantum leap from the garage to our first office space, it was important that we were in an environment that would foster our growth and have and replicate as much as possible the same type of energy that was at Bell Labs. So we were fortunate enough, I think that across the country, we're doing a really great job at creating accelerator programs and innovation centers and co-working spaces. So we landed at a great one, Harbor Designs in Baltimore, and basically they are a design and manufacturing wheelhouse, but they've also recognized that all of their companies that they were working with were dying on the vine because they were lacking either funding or direction. And so what they decided to do was really offer all of those resources within one space, which is why our team decided that this is the best place for us to be. It reminds us, and Jim is often working in our office, we're stealing him a couple days a week to be there, and he always says how happy he is to be there because we have a regulatory question. We can pop out of our office and ask another resident. And it's so important because, why reinvent the wheel when your neighbor knows exactly what to do? So.
Yes, you both have brought up some, I think, key words for invention: collaboration, freedom, risk-taking has been mentioned, problem solving. How do you nurture those in a workplace? You know, and what do you see as some, I mean, certainly you've had a lot of experience at different places. What do you see also that's inhibited it sometimes?
Well, let's deal with the negative part first. The inhibitions are can take many forms. I had to overcome many unpleasant situations because the majority of my colleagues and co-workers were white male, and very few women, and even fewer people of color. I have never accused them of deliberately being racist, but those tendencies don't sit well when you're exposed to it. For example, I'm a lot of very nervous energy. And so rather than send my secretary to pick up visitors when I had them, I go down and pick them up myself. And I brought this guy back, opened the door, set him down in the office, and went around to my desk. And he says, "When is Dr. West going to show up?" Well, that was a teaching moment, and that's what I try to do with these situations, to use them as moments to teach people that they have a stereotype. So that's certainly one thing that is difficult to overcome. One of the others is that when you begin to know that you're on the track of new technology, there are people who will claim that I gave you that idea, or I thought of that idea before, and you have to work out good responses to that. And I'm not so sure that that's colorblind. I think this is a general, and I won't deny that perhaps that does happen. But you see, in science, you have proof, and proof is in the form of a publication of some kind. So show me the paper was always my response to that, because if you can't show me the paper, then you have no grounds for your claim. Now, I'm going to leave the bad side there and go over to the good side. I am 88 years old, and I have not missed a day of work. And well, last week I was out a few days with a cold, but for the most part, I'm in every day. And the reason is my work is my hobby. What I do is what I love. And you cannot have a better situation than loving what you're doing. And it just happens to be able to afford you a reasonably comfortable lifestyle. And believe me, if you're doing what you love, you'll be damn good at it. And because you put your heart and your soul in it. And once you do that, right, there's no retreat. There's no coming back from that. Success is very important, but failure is also very important. I have a mantra: if I don't fail, I'm not trying hard enough, because I can't always be right. And nature can always throw a roadblock when it wants to. If you ask the right question, it will give you the answer that you did not expect, but which turns out to be quality information. When I was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, the CEO kept asking the question, "What makes you different?" I said, "I'm not different. I'm a human being, what else, blah, 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 blah." And one day he said, "Well, you are different. In the whole world, there are only 230 of you who are inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. So you have to admit that makes you unique." Well, what he was after, I finally gave up. And I told you some of the stories, like taking the watch apart, but curiosity. Curiosity is the mother of invention. If you're curious about how it works, or, gee whiz, wouldn't it be nice if I could solve a particular problem that I recognize? And when you do that, when you put your heart and soul into that, then you begin to feel what I feel, right? What I really enjoy feeling. Failure, yeah, that just means that, okay, I've got to get back up and get back on that horse because it cannot keep me down. And I do. Failure, I fail because I'm trying very hard. And that goes for the young people here to be particularly involved in things that you like to do. The Lemelson Foundation has a program called Invent, and it's for young students. I don't know where you start, probably 5th grade or something like that.
Well, there's several Lemelson programs, so we do different age groups. We sort of do the younger, and then there's high school and college. And
right, so that's the reason I'm confused.
That's all right, that's all right. There's a lot of Lemelson.
But the program is designed to teach young people about the invention process, how it works, how you go about inventing, what are the ingredients, what is necessary.
We do much of that in Spark Lab here, so again, you have to go after. It's like our advertisement. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Ellington because I got through my punchline.
Well, I think that when it comes down to risk, because I did hear that you mentioned, it's about thinking, what is the risk if I don't do it? If I'm not courageous enough to follow my dream? If I'm not, in our case, the risk is that we won't be able to positively affect the lives of these children, right? But when you think about it on any level, had you not taken the risk and had you not had the perseverance to keep going with the microphone, and I mean the frustration that I'm sure hit you day in and day out, but you have to just keep going and understand that that risk is worth taking. And it's so funny because from a social science standpoint, I work with a bunch of engineers now, and they're very risk averse. So I'm learning kind of this wonderful mix of how we all kind of work together and get to that end goal. But, it's about the environment that you put yourself in, recognizing that you're not going to know all of the answers, but that you have to find the right people to help you become whole, help your team become whole. And it's okay. The point is to find those people that aren't like you, that have specialties that you haven't either uncovered within yourself or that you're looking for, and really just collaborating and coming together for that positive end.
That's great. Well, I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I want all of you, I had mentioned before, I want you to start thinking about questions, and if you can line up at one of the 2 mics that we have up here, go ahead and okay, we got several people, good. So let's go right into Q&A, and then I think I'll have them finish with just saying a little something about sort of what their takeaway message they want you to leave with tonight. So we're going to alternate microphones, I think. So why don't we start here with this gentleman, and then we'll switch to the other mic.
Hi, I really appreciate the discussion.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
I said I really appreciate the dialogue. Dr. West, have you ever had issues with regards of making sure you were properly compensated? I know you said money wasn't a concern for you, but did you ever have an issue of getting proper compensation for any of your inventions or any of your patents, or proper credit?
That's a very, very interesting, very good question. One of I bought my first lunch at Bell Labs with the $1 that they paid me for any invention or any patent, intellectual property that I would come up with. And that was okay with me, and it's still okay because I had 2 labs, and each one of them was capitalized at more than $1 million. And where would I get the money to be able to have the tools to be able to do what I was able to do? The only other story one other story that I can mention, I had trouble making ends meet at the end of the month, and so I went to my director and said, I just, don't have enough money to get through the month. And he said, well, we'll get a financial planner to sit down and talk with you and see what he can do. And he did, and the financial planner said, there's nothing that I can see that he's doing wrong, so I got a 30% raise the next day.
Wow.
And but the whole, the gist of that story is that an unhappy researcher can't do research, because if I'm worried about how I'm going to put food on the table, I can't really work. So they really understood that model and made sure that I'm sure that they did that for more than just me, for many people that may have had the same problem.
Thank you.
All right, and
you.
to our left here?
Yes, I try to keep my comments short. I have a quick comment and two quick questions, then and now. First of all, thank you for being honest about your struggles and trials and giving back to your community. I really appreciate it. The then question is, growing up in a segregated society, having to go to libraries that were segregated, what type of things were you able to read to keep your mind growing stronger and stronger that you could achieve these goals? And then the now question is, what type of secondary information do you read? I know it's not just trade journals, just to keep your mind sharp and growing to still stay on the cutting edge.
Two very good questions. My favorite aunt only gave me books. She only became my favorite aunt after I grew up, during the time that I was getting these books. I really didn't appreciate it, but toys were much more appreciated. And my mom made sure I read them. So, and these were books not necessarily about science, but about life. It introduced me to the world, about how people in other parts of the world lived, and what unique ties we had and what we didn't have. What I read now for fun is not very much. I like Dan Brown and well, he's got a series of books, and I read them by listening to them, because I find that if I put it on before I go to bed and set it for an hour, sometimes I find that going back to catch up with it, that I was only awake for 10 minutes. It seemed like 10 hours. And sometimes I had to start it over again. So, Jack Reacher is another character. Let's see, Lee Childs, I think, is the author there. So it's that kind of thing that I try to use to relax my mind, because technical papers are not easy to read, not easy to understand, but very necessary part of what we do, because science is not done in a vacuum. It's done in the world. And when I'm on the verge, or feel that I'm on the verge of a new discovery, I work very hard and very fast, and I do because other people somewhere in the world are doing the same thing, because we all depend on what's published in the literature. I publish a paper tomorrow, somebody will read it and says, aha, I know his next step, and they'll beat me to it if I'm not careful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing, Dr. West. Wonderful to meet you. I'm a patent agent and 10-year foreign patent examiner, and I dedicate my practice to helping inventors, especially those with great ideas. What are some things you could, I guess, tell someone like me who's in the business of helping advance intellectual property? What are some things that would be useful to help, the advice to inventors and advice to those who help inventors get to the finish line?
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer, because it's not a straight road in general. It's kind of like my life. It's a random walk, because I never know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, because what I'm doing today dictates what's going to happen tomorrow. I get a lot of calls, and from people, and we need to exchange cards too, because I don't have anyone to turn them over to. Generally, I refer them to a book called Inventing for Dummies or something like that. I'm not sure of the exact title. But to say, this is what you do. You document your work. You not only document your work, and this is for everybody. You write it down, in a notebook that's not loose leaf, that's a bound notebook, and you get somebody to read what you have written and witness it and sign it, because this is the first paper that you may have to depend on when you get to the patent office for a real patent. This gives you the right as the earliest, unless somebody can come up with a more recent one. And I know I'm not dealing directly with your question, and there's a good reason, because I really don't have a good answer for you, except that it is an important give back to society. It is an important, especially in the underrepresented community, where many good ideas come. We did a Caduncin. This is one of those things that happen over too many beers sometimes, but a friend of mine who is at at National Science Foundation, we started a program called Inventors of the Future. It was one of those things where we went to high schools where there was a 30% graduation rate, high schools where 100% graduation rate, and we said, how can you use technology to improve the quality of your life or the quality of your community? What was so amazing about that experiment is that you'd think it would be very easy to put these suggestions in boxes. This came from the high school with 30% graduation rate. This came from a medium high school. This came from an affluent high school. You could not. You could not separate them in that way. And I'm still not sure what this is saying. But there's a lesson here that we all need to pay attention to. We all need to understand that invention does not require a PhD. Inventing does not require a master's degree. It does not require a bachelor's degree. In fact, it doesn't even require a high school degree, because some of our inventors from the last century couldn't read or write, but they could invent. So this is a confusing matrix, and I know it because it's confusing in my head, because I don't really know an answer to that. But please keep up the good work.
Thank you. Next, sorry, over here.
Well, I just wanted to follow up on the preceding question, since I'm a patent attorney too, and I was wondering if you could give us an idea of what difficulties you had in finding out your way to patent, so that we can, on our end, educate better the inventors and the people who are out there who feel lost because they don't know where to move or what to do. So what did you feel it was really missing on your path to patenting your work?
Yeah, I have to answer that question honestly. I hate patents. and I mean, there's a real good reason. Because, I write things the right way. And a patent attorney takes it and he writes it in a language that I don't understand, but I have to read it and understand it to say whether he got the idea. And
well, not every patent attorney does.
No, you're right. There's absolutely, that's absolutely true. But you see where this whole process is what makes this country great. It is what preserves our intellectual property and keeps it safe and keep it from being, in many cases, taken by other countries, and there's some of that's going on today. But how to make it easier, how to make it simpler is a question that is very, very difficult to answer, because it's such a process already that there ought to be a better way than spending $15,000, $20,000 to get a patent.
And there is.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of them are really very simple because you can write a patent and submit it without ever going through a patent attorney.
That is true too. And you will find sometimes that patent examiners will help you as a sole inventor.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
I hate to cut this off, but there's several people waiting, and I want to be sure to get everyone in. So if you don't mind, we're going to switch over to this microphone, and then they can talk. We'll get
you.
all the patenting people. We'll stand in this corner.
Dr. West, I'm Walter Zvickus from the Washington area, and I have heard about the renowned Bell Labs and how it was such a powerful, fertile place. But I have not heard from Bell Labs in a very long time, so please tell me, what happened to Bell Labs, and do you regret what happened?
I absolutely regret what happened. I wrote several white papers myself, appealing to for better judgment on part of the government. Bell Labs existed because AT&T was making more money than they were supposed to be making, right? And so they invested that money wisely into people like me. When the consent decree, which broke the Bell Labs apart, destroyed that fundamental financial support that was applied. And the argument against appealing was, well, we have national labs, but I can only say that the reputation of Bell Labs far exceeded any of the national labs. I don't know why, I don't even want to get into that. But one thing that I know is that Bell Labs was far freer in terms of the scope of what you could do, in terms of what the reward system was exactly what anyone who had good ideas and wanted to get those good ideas, to understand those ideas from the basic scientific standpoint, Bell Labs offered that opportunity to do things like that. I can remember at lunch, we had these nice placemats that were with a nice picture on one side, white on the other. The first thing you do was flip it over because you knew during that lunch you were going to have to write something down. and I have actually taken that placemat to my director and said, I need $100,000 to do this. I think it's worth doing. I got the money. And when you look at the current situation, funding is my biggest problem at the university. I have to sing for my money, and I don't always get it. In fact, I seldom get it. And it's getting worse from that standpoint in terms of being able to fund science. Now, fortunately for universities, most of the Bell Labs principal investigators are now at universities. So this work is still being continued, but I gave you the problem. The problem is funding that. When I didn't have to worry about money, I did twice as much work, because right now half my time is going out to try to find money to support the students that in my group.
Please, one follow-up thought. After World War II, there was a GI Bill, which paid for the college education of a lot of people, and it probably fueled the emergence of the United States as being a dominating premier country. And I know it was an expensive investment, but similarly, maybe the government should invest in a new Bell Labs for the same reason. Maybe it would be a good investment.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'd go to work for you tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take these last three. So let's go to the one over here, and then we'll have two more at this microphone.
Hello, my name is Weston, and I just wanted to know, what STEM program should one go into?
Winston, that's a real good question. There are a number of programs. Lemelson has a program, and you should check with some of the people here tonight. They can tell you about that. The National Inventors Hall of Fame has a program called Camp Invention. And I know you'll have a great deal of fun, because I have a great deal of fun when I go to Camp Invention, because there are plenty of tools and plenty of stuff to open up and see how it works and try to put it back together. and even some things that you can take apart and put back together, and the challenge is to see if you can get them back together and working. There's a lot of stuff on TV that you should look at too. I can't name any of the programs offhand because I'm a little beyond looking at them personally, although I may go back and try to find some for you. But the two programs that I mentioned are programs that I know about and I'm aware of. Have your mom and dad look on the internet for programs for children in STEM, in science, engineering, ST, engineering and mathematics, right? Okay?
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You.
All right, one more over here, two more over here.
Yes, I have a question for you both. So your daughter came up to you and said that you should take this technology and transfer it. Am I correct that how the conversation went?
Kinda.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was reading in Fast Company, I think, an article last week, and they were saying how when tech comes out, it's very much important to have the business model in place too, so that you can actually make bread from it, right? So how much do you, when you come out with new tech, are you thinking symbiotically at the same time, like the business model? Do you have other experts come in and say, hey, you know?
Yeah. That's a real good question, and I may be an oddball here, not like most people, but I have a real problem keeping my checkbook in order. So I'm definitely not a business person from the standpoint of what people that are involved and interested in business do. I do, however, this whole thing got started because we had this wonderful technology that had the potential of saving many, many lives. If there were devices that I could put in the hands of people in the third world, even people in this country, to screen for pneumonia, the opportunity to save lives would have been there. And this was my main motivation. And Ellington said she'd quit her job and head the business to make that happen for me. So I'm very
Why don't you
grateful.
tell us a little bit about that part of it?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty interesting. And to your question, my father, it's important to have blinders on. So when you're dealing with someone as innovative as my father, when we first started, and Ian and I were working very closely together on just creating this business model, and Jim would come into our office and say, so what about the Man-Mars mission? And we're like, what are you talking about, the Man-Mars? So the innovative mind leaps, right? And you have to stay focused, and you have to put those blinders on, and you have to pull in those industry experts to help guide you through and really make the best decision for that technology. It may not tell you itself, so you really have to see where the market fit is, what makes sense, what works and what doesn't. So, our team of 4 and having, Eileen, AT, and Ian in one room figuring it all out is what helped us and guided us through that path. So it was definitely a risk that I took joining this crazy team, but it's definitely been the best thing because the risk of not doing it, like I said before.
Well, she didn't join it. She put the team together. So, yeah.
And I do think that man's Mars is very important.
It is, but not this year.
Hello, this question is for Dr. West. How does the layperson find that mentor?
Yeah. Mentors are not easy to find. Cooperative mentors are not easy to find, I guess is a better way to phrase it. You have to be bold and ask people. If there's someone that you read about, and I've had this happen where people have read my publications and I get this nice email back saying, I really, really like what you've published here. And I'm senior at either in high school or university, and what advice can you give me? Can you be my mentor? I have mentors ranging from, I don't know, 5th grade. They're probably a little bit further along than 5th grade now, right through the students that I mentor at Johns Hopkins University. I would seek people out. You have to be the aggressor. because they're not going to come and look for you. We're all busy, and so we don't want any more work. And so mentoring is a time-consuming effort. But if you are insistent, if you pester, and believe me, I've been pestered, you eventually give in because you figure that, gee whiz, you see, mentoring is a two-way street. It doesn't mean that I'm always giving to my mentees. My mentees give back to me. In fact, some of my mentors, I don't know, I've got it. Some of the people that I've mentored are now mentoring me because of they followed me and then they branched off in their own direction, and now they can teach me things, and I really appreciate them as mentors. One that I can think of offhand is Bill Massey, who's professor at Princeton University. And Bill has been able to bring 5 black PhDs, both men and women, at Princeton University. And I wouldn't be afraid to say that equals the total number of black PhDs that have in STEM from Princeton. I need to look that up. I may be overstepping here a little bit, but I don't think not too far. But I'm very interested in how Bill did that. What is your model? How did you accomplish that? And believe me, I've learned from him because I have 2 underrepresented minority PhD students in my group at Johns Hopkins, which is also unique as far as Hopkins is concerned.
So by pestering, do you mean emails?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a great option. LinkedIn, I would highly recommend. Yeah.
LinkedIn, where you try to contact the person through LinkedIn? Just tell them what you like. Oh, okay. And then also, how does the layperson, not necessarily affiliated with a university, find that stimulating environment, that nurtures?
Yeah, they don't exist, so you have to create it. Okay.
I think they do. There are many things. I don't know if you're a DC or Maryland local. Maryland, as am I. And so there are wonderful things like Accelerate Baltimore or the Harbor Innovation Center, things like that, that if you just reach out to people there and coordinators there, they will help you and point you in the right direction. So I would highly encourage that you do that.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, I know everyone wants to get done here, so I just want to give actually just a minute, just in case there's one last thing that you want to get out to people here, especially the kids in the audience. And then we want to, of course, applaud them for their great work. Final word?
Sure, yeah. I just think that the most important thing is a sense of community. And all of us tonight in this room are a part of a community. I was so surprised, speaking of LinkedIn, that when this program was announced, that about 25 people that are actually in this room that I'd never met before reached out to me and they said, listen, I'm a pediatric pulmonologist, I'm an electrical engineer, I'm a philanthropist, and I'm so interested in the work that you're doing. How can I help? And collaboration really, I think, sparks some of the most incredible innovations. And so you have to put yourself out there. You have to reach out. And really, this is the new community. This is the new way that we establish ourselves and dominate on a global scale as a country. And so everyone in this room, you all should get to know each other. You're here for a reason. You carry a common thread. And so I would just encourage that and enjoy your time together.
Right. I definitely support that part. I'd just like to also add that don't leave it all here when you go home. Take it with you because that's very important too. It's important for your children. It's important for your children's children. And I don't say that, well, look, Earth is a spaceship. That's the best way that I can describe it. And some very bad things are happening to the spaceship that need to be corrected. And we don't have all the answers. I mean, scientists today don't have all the answers. So where are the answers to these problems? They're in the heads of the young people who are right here, right? And it's really, really very important that these young people be nurtured and given the tools that are necessary for them to succeed in science. Because science got us to where we are, and science is the only thing that I can see that's going to take us to the next step.
With that, let's thank our speakers very much for their work.
Good job.
Good job.
So, thank you all for coming. I don't have a grand pronouncement to make other than we welcome you to enjoy some drinks, some continued conversation, engage with each other, this very special community we have here tonight, and as was suggested, to take that with you and bring it on outward. Our next Innovative Lives program is on May 1st. We'll feature Mary Lynn Morris, the inventor of the rolling dance wheelchair. So we look forward to seeing you all back then. Have a great evening.